Let's bring in Tom Verducci, the intrepid baseball writer, Sports Illustrated, senior baseball writer, MLB Network, MLB on Fox. Tom, let me start with this 3-batter rule for relief pitchers, because I don't feel that bad that I didn't know about it, because Joe Madden and let's see, who else? A couple other, Joe Girardi didn't even know about this. Did you know about this?
They've been talking about it, and actually almost a year ago when MLB wanted to do this, the union did not sign off on it, but they said, okay, we will agree not to challenge this if you want to implement the rule. So that's where we are now. They're going to implement the rule in 2020. I got to be honest with you, Dan. There's no two ways about this. I hate this rule. I think baseball is going to a very dangerous place where you are now telling a manager there are artificial governors on how you can run a game. In other words, the best moves that you can make, the best to win the game now, sometimes your hands would be tied. And the example that I use is last year, Game 7 of the World Series. A.J. Hinch brought Will Harris out there. They were up by 1. Kendrick hits the home run. Cabrera hits a hanging curveball for a single. Harris is absolutely gassed. It's Game 7 of the World Series. The manager can't take him out of the game because of a stupid rule that says you have to stay in. Can you imagine the NFL, somebody telling Bill Belichick a sub goes in the game and he's got to stay in for 3 plays? That makes no sense.
What kind of loopholes do managers have? Because I'm wondering if you just say, if I'm a pitcher and if I get roughed up in my first 2 batters, or my manager only wants me to stay in for 2 batters, then I just give a signal and like my shoulder's starting to hurt a little bit here. Like, how are we going to get around it? Because it feels like there is a loophole or two.
Yeah, I mean, managers and baseball people, they'll find a way if it's there. I mean, if a guy complains that he's got a stomach ache or a cramp or something that's not going to turn up on an MRI where you need proof, how are you going to say the guy was faking it? That is a loophole. I don't know how often guys would try it. But here's the thing. You were throwing some numbers out there, Dan. This rule is not worth the cost of messing with the strategy of the game. I figured out that if it were in place in 2019, it would affect 1 game every 3 or 4 games in the course of a year, about 700 to 800 pitching appearances of 1 or 2 batters that do not finish a half inning. You know what that works out to the average? How much time you're saving in the average game? 44 seconds. You are changing the ways a manager can run a game for the sake of 44 seconds. Nobody will notice that. Nobody.
Okay, but why did they implement this?
These moves are actually, because in 2015 when things were really getting crazy with pitching moves, be the lefty come in and the righty came in, and that seemed to get out of hand, and people just, as baseball people like to do, complaining about it and started extrapolating it out. Well, what's going to happen next? We're going to have 27 pitchers for 27 outs. But actually, in the last 4 years, it's gone down by 20%. It's not nearly the issue that it was back 4 years ago. So it's a solution in search of a problem. Listen, the biggest problem in baseball is the time in between pitches. While these pitching changes have been going down in terms of the short ones, time of game has been going up because they've added between 2 and 3 seconds per pitch. That's 15 to 20 minutes of absolutely nothingness in the course of a game. That's what they have to address.
Do you think there'll be any modifications before the start of next season to this rule?
Well, I think it's such a stupid rule. I've thought all along that push comes to shove, we get to opening day, and they said, okay, we won't go ahead and implement it. I mean, Dan, you got to find me a manager who, A, knows about the rules you just alluded to, and B, actually likes the rule. What manager would like a rule that tells him how he can deploy his personnel to win a baseball game? I can't even think of a rule where baseball went out of their way to put a handcuff on a manager for the sake of 1 pitching change every 3 or 4 games.
Talking to Tom Verducci of Sports Illustrated, also MLB Network, MLB on Fox. Recap free agency here. Where would you start?
Good week for Scott Boras.
Gosh.
We knew he had the 3 biggest guys coming in, but as opposed to the last few years when the winters were so slow and waiting didn't pay off, Scott changed his tactics. And to his defense, too, these were just super players that were people wanted to get out there early. I thought he did great. I thought the whole key was getting Strasburg signed back with the team he wanted to go to with a contract that really surprised people. And once that cornerstone was laid, then Garrett Cole was right on top of that. And then once the Angels didn't get the guy they really wanted, Cole, they pivoted in a hurry to Rendon. So the pace of it was crazy, but I'm not surprised with where the individual players wound up, but it was kind of a whirlwind there for the last 3 days.
Yeah, I was surprised with Rendon. I didn't know if he wanted to go to the West Coast. You mentioned the Dodgers. They didn't get Rendon. They didn't get Cole. Does that mean they had a bad offseason?
I don't know, but they're the most fascinating team because they've been in it and been connected to a lot of huge names, and there's many paths that they could go. Their priority was Garrett Cole. They just couldn't win the recruiting war with the New York Yankees. The Yankees went a little bit farther in terms of the contract. Just quite frankly, sold him a little bit better than the Dodgers did. A lot of rumors about Lindor winding up in L.A. I think it's a perfect fit, but I think it's gotten ridiculous with some of the names that are being thrown out there. Every day there's a different name. It's Arenado, it's Betts, it's Lindor, it's Seager. There's very rarely do these star players get traded. Chris Bryant, and in fact, general managers telling me it's harder than ever to trade big-time names. So what the Dodgers' next move is, I'm not sure. I think they need another starting pitcher. Giants fans would hate this, but I'd love to see Mad Bum in a Dodger uniform. I mean, he's the kind of pitcher that, let's face it, Dan, that team needs to not just get to the playoffs. We've seen that movie before, but to win the darn thing. And right now, the number 2 starter in a postseason environment would be Clayton Kershaw. And, we know what his track record is.
If it was your money and not Artie Moreno's, and you could have Garrett Cole at that price or Anthony Rendon at that price.
No, I'd go Cole for sure. I just think they had an uphill battle all the way, the Angels. They had to convince Garrett Cole that they're going to win sooner rather than later. I mean, the Dodgers and the Yankees have ready-made World Series contenders. Angels just couldn't do that with Garrett Cole. So I do like the way they pivoted to Anthony Rendon. Best position player on the market. I think that team's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I don't know how many games they'll win, but Rendon and Trout and Ohtani batting back-to-back is pretty cool. I would go out and get Dallas Keuchel if I were them, because now with that left side of the infield with Eldrenton Simmons and Rendon, I mean, just let it hit ground balls to the left side. Those guys will go get everything. They do need at least another starting pitcher, whether it's Ryu, Keuchel, Bumgarner. There's some good arms out there. Trading for Corey Kluber is definitely in their crosshairs as well. They're not done yet, but that was I called it an ankle breaker of a pivot by the Angels. We didn't get Garrett Cole. All right, let's go get Anthony Rendon.
We got more information. I guess a study was done with professors on the baseballs, and we realized that part of the spike in home runs had to do with the seams being raised on baseballs. Now, is that juicing a baseball in a different way? Is it doctoring a baseball? Like what? I don't know who to point a finger at and say, well, wait, you raised the seams. Did you raise them on purpose here? And how much of an impact did that have on launch angle and drag and all this other stuff that we're talking about?
Yeah, they said about 60% of this was due to the lower seams of the baseball. 40% is because of what we've all been watching, the way guys are swinging the bat now. They call it the launch angle revolution, get the ball in the air. More fly balls, more home runs. But the seams are definitely lower. Why they are, that's the question, right? And the report did go out of its way to say that they found no evidence anyway, that this was done intentionally. I think it's got a lot to do with manufacturing, Dan. That manufacturing process is just so better that the baseballs are tighter, the seams are tighter, and that makes them lower. So a ball that has lower seams is going to have less drag as it goes in the air. And you say, well, what kind of a difference could it make? That makes a lot of difference on fly balls when you're talking about another 10 or 15 feet of carry. I think baseball needs to do a better job, and they know this, of just maintaining the integrity of the baseball, how they're manufactured, how they're stored. They realized that the ball was flying really far and surprisingly so last year, but they can't tell us an absolute reason why the seams were lower. They basically own Rawlings, the company makes it. They supervise the manufacturing process. They have to come up with ideas or reasons why it's happening.
The Astros investigation, what do you think the possible punishments are?
This is going to be big, Dan. You probably heard the commissioner yesterday say this is the most thorough investigation the Office of the Commissioner in baseball has ever undertaken. When you think about, biogenesis down in Miami, the George Steinbrenner investigation, the Pete Rose investigation, and here we're talking about, the mother of all commissioner investigations. That tells me this is huge. We know that they have more than 70,000 emails. We know that they have phone records, instant messages. They've interviewed more than 70 people. In fact, this thing has gone on longer because they're just buried by a mountain of just evidence that they have to go through. So I think it's going to be something like the NCAA, institutional control more than individual suspensions and fines. There'd probably be some of those too, but I think the biggest hammer will be on the Astros in terms of the size of the fine and how many draft picks that they lose. I'm talking about 2 to 3 years worth of first-round draft picks, taking away international draft picks, because the way to hurt baseball teams now is not to fine them. As we've seen this week, they've got a lot of money. You really restrict their access to talent, taking away those draft picks. That I think is going to be, whatever number that is, how many years, I think that's going to be the biggest hammer.
But this might be a silly question, and I'll preface this by saying that. Could they strip them of the World Series title?
No, I don't think it's going that far. I don't know, Dan, that the evidence listen, I don't know what evidence they have. I know some of the things that we've all read and heard and seen, but I don't think this is going to say that games in the World Series or ALCS were influenced directly. That's a different animal to try to really define there. I mean, all of us, that's the shame of this, right? It's kind of like steroids, whether guys did or didn't, and the guy that has a big home run year, you say, well, he must have. We don't know that. So that's what's happening here with the Astros. Everything that they've done is now in question, even if not literally everything is. But this is on them for putting themselves in this situation where they're subject to such suspicion.
And I know I asked this of you before, and you have to tread lightly because you cover these guys, but do you think it is possible that A.J. Hinch did not know anything about this while managing the Astros?
My guess is it's not possible that he didn't know anything about it, because if you were in the dugout, hard to miss the banging of a trash can when you're in there.
Yeah.
You know, especially my understanding is, Dan, it went on for about a 3-month period in the regular season of 2017. If it was one game, I could say, well, yeah, the manager might not know what was going on. But if it went on for that period of time, then yes. How complicit he was in this? Was he an active participant? Did he discourage it? Those are the things we don't know. But awareness of it, I would say absolutely.
Great stuff, Tom. Good to catch up with you. Thanks. We appreciate your time.
Always great, Dan. Thanks.
That's Tom Verducci, Sports Illustrated senior baseball writer.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.